CQ, CQ, CQ. This is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and you are listening to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, K5CLM, and I'm your host for this episode as well as all the other episodes that I've done so far, and probably in the near future. Last week we talked about packet radio, and if you haven't listened to it, head on back there and listen to episode number 5. Today is going to be somewhat the same, but somewhat different. Now, before we get started, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before that I keep meaning to do and keep forgetting about it. You can find the show notes for today at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/6. That's the number 6. You can find the show notes for this, all the links that we're going to talk about in this episode, as well as a little bit more of a more detailed look into APRS. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started. What exactly is APRS? What does this stand for? Well, there has been kind of a hot topic that I have read about and have listened to over the past few weeks on APRS. Now, when I first heard about it several years back, I was told that it was Automatic Position Reporting System, that the P stood for position. Now, recently I saw a video of a gentleman that did a presentation at some hamfest, and he was very adamant that the P stood for packet, not position. Now, I wasn't sure about it. I just kind of took it at his word, but I found out a little different as I was doing research for this. So, APRS started really back in like the early 80s, okay? It originally with like packet, RIDI, all the digital modes that use the ASCII, the ASCII formatting, started sometime around 1976. That's about when ASCII came about and came into effect. Now, actually, APRS, or a earlier version of APRS, actually started about 1984, I want to say. And it was created by a guy named Bob, and I know I'm going to butcher the last name here, so if you happen to be listening to this, I am so sorry. But his last name I'm going to say is Bruninga. His call sign is WB4APR. That's Whiskey Bravo 4 Alpha Papa Romeo. And he created the first incarnation of APRS in 1984. At the time, he was working for AMRAD, the Amateur Radio Research and Development Group. Now, these are the people that created like the first TNC back in like right around 1980 or so. And he developed this system that was the early incarnation of APRS in order to report the position and status of a 100-mile cross-country endurance horse race. Now, at this time, it wasn't called APRS. It was actually called Connectionless Emergency Traffic System, or CETS for short. So, back to this argument that has been going on about what the P stands for in APRS. In 1992, actually went to his website, and his website you can find at aprs.org. He actually maintains this. He has a bunch of information about APRS. I mean, like bukus and bukus. I mean, I read for probably 2 days on information about APRS, what it can do, what it can be used for, some of the things that people have done with it, radios that use it, etc. I mean, there's just a bunch of information on there. So if you want to learn about APRS, head on over there to his website. You can find the link to it in the show notes for today's episode. Now, on his history page, he says that in 1992, he realized that he could use his call sign to change the name of the CETS program that he wrote to reflect his call sign. Now, that's pretty cool, And he changed it to, in his history, it says Automatic Packet Reporting System. So you would think that this is the answer to that argument, that the P actually stands for packet. Now, one of the other websites that I was looking at, Wikipedia, actually said that it was originally a position reporting system, and later, as GPS became more readily available to the general public, it was changed to packet from position, so that it would kind of give more of a more, I don't even know what the word I'm looking for here. It would reflect more of what it can do, I guess, basically. Now, in his history, it says packet. Well, as I was reading this history page, down at the bottom, he gives a bunch of different references to articles that he had wrote. And in 1992, he wrote a paper that he released at the ARRL 11th Computer Networking Conference. And the title of that paper was called Automatic AX.25 Position Reporting System. So that kind of tells me that it was originally position instead of packet. So I'm not entirely sure. Either way, I know that now the P stands for packet. And why does it stand for packet? Well, the reason it stands for packet is because it's not just position information that's being sent out over APRS. There's so much more that is sent out. And we're going to get into that here in just a little bit more. Let's talk about the actual network, okay? APRS uses the same basic network as packet radio, and that's why I did APRS after packet. Packet was, back in like the 70s and 80s or so, and it kind of died off. Well, after APRS came about, the infrastructure and the hardware kind of got a rebirth, if you will, and it was being used more, so packet kind of came back. And how much of packet is actually used, like I said in the last episode, I'm not really sure. I don't really know. I always thought it was dead. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but if it is not dead, I don't see it lasting much longer with the new technologies we have going out. But anyways, we've already talked about this. Back to APRS. So with APRS, it's somewhat like packet, and it's somewhat not. Okay. The similarities of it is that it does use the same hardware, and it does use the same protocol, and it does still need the infrastructure that packet did. However, that's pretty much where it ends. Okay. Now, with packet radio, when you wanted to talk to somebody, say 50 miles away, you would have to use somebody as a digipeater to make your connection and talk. Okay. Now, you would try to connect to this person, and you would say, okay, I'm going to use station A, and I'm going to use station B to get to station C. Okay, that's all well and good. But with APRS, it doesn't use the connectivity feature that packet radio had. Okay, it basically just sends out bursts of information in all directions, and anybody that receives it will retransmit it, and then they'll retransmit it, and they'll retransmit it. Now, you might say, okay, well, if it just retransmits it and keeps going and going and going, then the frequency is going to get congested, packets are going to start colliding and losing information, and it's not going to work. Well, that was true to an extent. Okay, at the early release of APRS, they used what was called a relay and wide, I believe, in the path setup of the TNC. Now, what this did is basically if your digipeater was set to wide or your digipeater was set to relay, then it would relay it. Well, what happened is exactly what you'd think. One person would digipede it, it would go to someplace else, they would digipede it, and then the first station that digipeted it would hear it again and do it again, and it would just go back and forth, kind of ping pong back and forth between those two things. And it really added congestion. So what happened is that they changed the protocol or the programming in the TNCs to make it where it would use a different kind of path. The wide and the relay kind of went to the wayside, and they use now what's called a wide N-N. Now, the N's in there are numbers, okay? And the suggested or the standard path setting for a mobile unit or a portable unit is wide 1-1, comma, wide 2-1. So what exactly does this 1-1 and 2-1 do? Okay, so if you have a mobile station and you have your path set to wide 1-1, comma, wide 2-1, your station is station A, okay? It transmits and station B hears it, okay? Station B will take and subtract the first one, okay? It'll change the wide 1-1 to wide 1-0, and then it would retransmit it. Then another station would hear it, and it would say, okay, well, there's a wide 1-0, so I'm not going to worry about that one. But it also has a wide 2-1. So, okay, I'm going to use it, I'm going to retransmit it, but I'm going to subtract one of the numbers. So it goes from wide 1-0, comma, wide 2-1 to wide 1-0, comma, wide 2-0. And then it retransmits it. And then it goes to another station, and that station's TNC looks at it and says, okay, well, it has wide 1-0 and it has wide 2-0, so I'm not going to retransmit it at all. It's done. That's pretty much where it dies. So, being that, you're basically looking at a 3-hop. Okay? Now, it's basically the same things we talked about in Packet just a minute ago, where you connect to two stations and the third station is where you want to connect to. And you might say, well, I know that I have 4 people that I can connect to talk to this person that's 75 miles away. So why would I want to do this instead? Well, think of it this way. Packet is more of a directional antenna. Okay? It's more of a beam antenna. You focus your transmission in one direction, and anybody else that hears this packet is pretty much just going to ignore it. With APRS, on the other hand, any station that hears it and that is set up as a digipeater will take that signal, subtract one of the digits, and retransmit it. Okay, so if you're sitting in the middle of town and there's 4 people, okay, you have one person to the north, one to the east, one to the south, one to the west, and each one of them hears your packet. They're each going to subtract that first number and retransmit it. That means that your signal is going out in 4 different directions, and it's all getting digipeated. Now, you may have the station in the east might be able to hear the station in the south, but the TNC is smart enough to know that they've already received that packet, so they're not going to retransmit it. So you get 3 hops or 4 hops in every direction rather than just a focused direction. So that is why I think that APRS is better when it comes to wide area coverage. Now, it can't do the bulletin board system, and it can't do the keyboard to keyboard communications like packet radio can, but it can do more like a text messaging thing, okay, if you will. The text messaging, you can send a short message to a certain person, they'll receive it, send a short message back. It's kind of like Twitter, or I guess Twitter would probably be one of the easiest explanations. You have a short amount of characters, 120 characters or whatever it is, and that's all you have. You can't sit there and talk back and forth like you can on Packet. So there is some limitations to as far as text messaging goes, or like the keyboard to keyboard goes with APRS, but with all the other stuff that APRS can do, it more than makes up for it. So what exactly can you do with APRS? There is so much information out there on things that people do or have done or can do with APRS. It's not even funny. Okay, let's talk about a few of them. Okay, well, I'm not going to talk about all of them. You can go to aprs.org, read up on it if you want to know some more. Okay, but let's talk about a few of them. The first one is probably the most used uses of APRS, and as you probably guessed, that's position reporting. Okay, you can go to aprs.fi, that's aprs.foxtrot India, and the person that wrote this website integrated all the APRS data that goes through the eye gates onto the internet in real time, and he integrated all this information with Google Maps. And you can go anywhere in the world and look at all these different stations, where they go, what they're doing, etc. Weather stations, people that are driving home from work or whatever. You can see all this on this one site. And there's actually a couple sites out there, but aprs.fi is probably the most, or the dominant one. So not only do you have your everyday trackers, okay, you have the vehicle, people have the Kenwood D700 or the Elenco DR135, I think, or even the new System Fusion and D-Star radios, which I believe have TNCs built in that you can use it for APRS. These people, they have mounted in their cars, they're set for APRS channel, and they're using it on APRS. They're driving to and from work, and they're sending out signals to the local RF area, and people can watch them drive to work and home from work, or going to the grocery store or whatever. In a way, that's kind of cool. In a way, it's kind of creepy. You get a stalker or something like that, and then they learn about this, and they know exactly where you are. That'd be kind of creepy. But not only the everyday stuff, but then there's also other functions of it that you can use. Okay, let's say that your club does a bike race, or they do a walkathon, or a race for the cure, or something like that. Okay, let's do a bike race, for example. Okay, my local area club here used to do a bike race, 100-mile bike race, and we used to man each rest stop with a amateur radio operator. We haven't done it in the last couple of years, and I'm not exactly sure why, but we did do it before. Well, each one of these races have like 10 or 12 vehicles that are called sag wagons. These sag wagons will go up and down the course and look for riders that are hurt, or have broken wheels, or are just plain tired and don't want to finish the race, and they'll pick them up and they'll take them to the next rest stop or take them back to the finish line. But you never know where these sag wagons were. We didn't have the APRS system set up here, and unfortunately we really still don't. But it's still a good feature to have. Now, if we did have APRS, we could have an APRS system in each one of these. If we had a APRS unit in each of the sag wagons, the net control operator would always know where a sag wagon was, where the closest one was, and if there was a report of a down rider or somebody that was just plain tired or whatever, they could say, okay, well, sag wagon 2 is closest to this rider, okay, and then they get in contact with them, and if you're really lucky, you have a ham working in that sag wagon, you can call them on the radio. If not, you do the cell phone thing or whatever, and they go and pick them up, rather than having kind of luck of the draw, or oh, yep, there goes a sag wagon by a rest stop. And not only about sag wagons, but we have like an ambulance that's on standby. If the ambulance doesn't have a tracker built in, like so many of them don't, you can put an APRS system in there, a little a temporary one or something. Or let's say you have somebody that works on bikes, that repairs them or whatever. Put a tracker in there, okay? If somebody breaks down or breaks a spoke or a pedal or something like that, but they're wanting to continue the race, then the net control operator can look at the map and say, okay, well, the repair wagon is between rest stop 1 and rest stop 2, and he's heading towards rest stop 2. So if you don't have communications with them, you can call the operator that's at rest stop 2 and say, hey, catch the repair wagon when he gets there and send him down to rest stop 5 or something like that. So there's a whole bunch of uses just for this little thing. And not only on stuff like races and stuff, but what about like with Skywarn? Okay, if every Skywarn operator that was on the net had a APRS tracker, then you would always know where the unit was that was talking. You would always know if you lose communication with them, you'd know where they were at. And there's even, in some programs, you can even overlay the radar image onto your APRS map. So if you're looking at the radar and you have it overlaid on your APRS map, you could say, okay, well, whatever call sign, you have a strong cell that's coming your way. You might want to buckle down or find cover because it looks kind of nasty. So just this one feature of APRS is worth the money or the time or the effort to get into this. And you can get into it relatively cheap. You don't have to buy the big high dollar $400 or $500 radio or whatever. You can actually buy just a little thing from one of them is Bionics.com, which I will have linked in the show notes for this, and you can buy what's called a tiny tracker. And they actually have a tiny tracker that has a 8-watt radio built into it. So basically all you have to do is plug in a GPS to it, plug in power to it, and it has everything else. It has the TNC. It has the radio. All you have to do is plug in power, plug in the GPS, and plug in an external antenna to it, or even like a little rubber duck antenna. We actually made one of these kits with the tiny tracker. We put it in a little project box, put a little mag mount antenna to it, and stuck it in sag wagons one year. And it worked perfectly, and then at the end of the race, they turned them in, you were done, you were good. So, another thing that I see for this, before we move on, okay, this is one more thing. Okay, I'm sure all of you have heard of LoJack on TV or whatever. Imagine if your car got stolen and you had an APRS system in your car that was, say, hidden somewhere, wasn't integrated into your radio, and you had it where when you turned on the switch, it turned on your APRS system. Okay, you wake up one morning, your car's gone. You have a APRS system in your car that automatically turns on. You call the cops. Hey, my car got stolen. They need to report it stolen. Oh, and by the way, it's at the corner of 4th and Magnolia or whatever. This is where it's at. Go get my car. So that right there is I think basically enough to get involved with this. So what else can be used with it? Not only that, so another use of APRS that they've added, and the reason they changed it to packet from position, I believe, is several other little features. Okay, you can make a TNC and set it to like a location of your meeting place or a ham fest or something like that, and have it where it'll post a beacon up and say, okay, well, we have our monthly meetings on this date at this time at this location, and it'll put it on the map. If you're looking at a map, it'll put it on there. You click on it, you get all the information. Not only that, but you can get it on your radios. If you have like the D700 from Kenwood or something like that, it has that information. It'll pop up there. You can put weekly club nets, club net tonight on this frequency with this PL. You can also do things like your local repeater. It can have a APRS output with its frequency and PL tone and its average range. If somebody's visiting from that's not from there where the repeater is, and they have APRS, they get an APRS bulletin or an APRS message from your repeater saying this is the local repeater, this is the PL tone, this is the coverage area, and they can tune to it to talk to somebody. How many times have you gone on a trip and as a ham, one of the things that you did was map out what repeaters you're going to do, what you're going to talk on? With the digital age, that's granted become a whole lot easier because they have, trip planner programs where you can go and it actually has the repeaters built into it. They have the D-Star that can do the automatic location or the automatic repeater finder and stuff like that. But, this is one way to do it where you don't have to do that. If you're somewhere where you're not planned to go, you can find a local repeater. Now, another way of doing this is a feature called voice frequencies. The frequencies field was added shortly after Katrina, and it was kind of pushed by the ARRL so that when an APRS packet sent out, the frequency field was filled with the voice frequency that you were on, that you were talking on. So they could look and say, okay, well, this is where this person is. This is the frequency that they're on, so I can, call them on the voice channel and talk to them. So, just these few little things. Okay, I'm just barely scratching the surface on what APRS can all be used for, but we're running really low on time, so we're going to kind of hurry up here a little bit. Now, throughout the episode, you've heard me talk about like the D700. I mentioned the Elenco, I believe it's the TM135. The Kenwood D7A, I believe, has the built-in TNC. ICOM D-Star radios have a built-in TNC, I believe, that can be used on APRS. System Fusion radios, the Yaesu System Fusion radios, have a built-in TNC that can be used for APRS. So there's a lot of commercial amateur radio equipment out there that have built-in TNCs that can be used for APRS. So what if you don't want to go out and buy one of these radios? Okay, let's say you have a radio that is sitting around your house and you haven't used it for a while, or you don't use it very often, and you still want to get an APRS. Well, you can buy just a TNC. You can buy like a Cantronics KPC3 Plus, I believe is what they're at now, that'll work with it. The KPC Plus, I believe, there's several of them from Cantronics that do it. MFJ has some TNCs, I believe, and there's several others. You can also even just hook a radio into your sound card of your computer and run an APRS program, and your computer becomes your TNC. So there's several ways to do it that you don't have to buy the full-blown radio. Now, the last way that we're going to talk about is, like I mentioned before, the Tiny Tracker. Bionics, which is just BYONICS, Bionics.com. They make the Tiny Tracker. They make a weather tracker. They make several kits that you can buy and build or buy pre-built that works with APRS. They have everything that you need, the cases, the boards, the GPS receivers, all that. So, and it's like $100. So that's probably the cheapest way to get into it. If you don't want to spend extra money on a radio or a TNC or something like that, you can do this. 8 watts goes a long way on APRS, especially in a mobile unit, and especially if you have decent coverage in your local area. So that about wraps it up for APRS. You can find more information about everything that we talked about plus a whole lot more in the show notes today. Again, that's everythinghamradio.com/podcast/6. That's the number 6. So check that out. While you're there, subscribe to the blog. Instructions are at the bottom of the blog post on how to do that, and at the end of this podcast. So let's move on to our amateur radio spotlight for today. So for today's Amateur Radio Club Spotlight, we're going to be talking about the Cabot Small Town Amateur Radio Service. The Cabot Small Town Amateur Radio Service is located in Cabot, Arkansas. And their club call sign is Whiskey 5 Sierra Tango Romeo. Not rodeo, Romeo. They actually have their club call, or their club spells out STARS. They're the STARS group, or the STARS club there in Cabot. They have, their website, you can find it at w5str.org. That's Whiskey 5 Sierra Tango Romeo.org. They have quite a bit of information on there. Again, you can find the links to this Amateur Radio Club website, as well as their Facebook page, on the show notes for today. So head on over there. It's a whole lot easier. Just click on that, then type it in. They have 2 repeaters. They have a 2-meter repeater at 145.410 with a negative offset and an 85.4 tone. They also have a 440 repeater at 442.475 with a positive offset and a 114.8 tone. So if you're in the local area, head on over to one of those 2 frequencies, give somebody a call on there, or say your mobile or something like that, and see if somebody comes back to you. I'm sure that they probably will. They also have a Echolink node that you can connect to. That's W5STR-R. It is node number 507018. Not sure if you need that or not. I don't believe so. I believe just the W5STR-R will get you connected there. They use a club simplex at 147.57, so they're not always on the repeater. They have the simplex there that they talk on as well, and from what I understand, it's pretty active to kind of keep the traffic off the repeaters, I guess, so to speak. Their meetings are held on the second Sunday of the month at 1:30 p.m. They meet at the Criswell Robinson American Legion, post number 71, there in Cabot. The address is 115 North 1st Street, there in Cabot, Arkansas. They normally meet for lunch at about 11:30 in the morning, the day of the meeting, and have a kind of group lunch. I guess they have it at maybe several different restaurants, maybe the same restaurant. So if you're in the area and it's about that time of the month, head on over there, introduce yourself, let them know that you heard of their club on the Everything Ham Radio podcast. And if you're needing to upgrade or something like that, they also offer testing sessions after every meeting. Walk-ins are welcome. They don't require you to pre-register unless you're upgrading to general or extra class. Then they got to have the extra class VE in order to give those tests. So head on over to their website, check it out. They have a lot of neat pictures. They have several links to other clubs in the area. They have several materials that you can look at. They have Hamfest information in the area, which they actually just had the ARRL Arkansas State Convention on the 20th this month, so a little late on that, but the next one in the area is Union City, Tennessee. I don't know how far that is, but it's the Ides of March Hamfest. and then several others that are around the area they have a listing of. It looks like they just got some new hams here recently. Looks like they licensed like 4 people here in the past month or something like that. So head on over, check them out, shoot them an email, tell them you heard about them from the Everything Ham Radio podcast. So I guess that's about it for this episode. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this episode. One more thing before I go. If you would like to have your club highlighted on this podcast, send an email to k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Tell me what the club name is, what the website address is for your club, and anything about your club that you would like me to know. I want to, highlight as many clubs as I can. Right now, I've just been going through the ARRL directory and randomly picking somebody or looking through each one of them. I'm going through and basically going state by state from the very first one up to the last one. So, if you would like yours to be highlighted, either when I get to that state or before then, like I said, shoot me that email, give me that information, and maybe your club will be highlighted. Okay, until next time, talk to y'all later. Hey everybody, once again I'd like to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. If you like what you heard here, head on over to our website. There's lots of information there that I'm sure you're going to love. You can find it at everythinghamradio.com. While you're there, subscribe to get emails on when I publish a new post or a new podcast. You can click on the subscribe button at the top of the page or go there directly at everythinghamradio.com/subscribe. Also, like me on Facebook at facebook.com/everythinghamradio and follow me on Twitter at K5CLM. Also, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to this podcast, like it, share it with your friends, help me spread the word. So until next time, 7 and 3.